Why, hello there. Sorry, it's my best everyone impression or lame attempt at it. Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity. I'm here to talk about Star Wars Episode 9. I almost called it The Last Jedi, but no, it is The Rise of Skywalker. I just got home from the movie theater from seeing it. The first part of this video will be spoiler free, so if you haven't seen the movie, you're a-okay to continue. But at some stage, at some point in time in this video, I will get into spoilers, but I will give you a proper spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, that will be your cue to skedaddle and then come back once you have seen the movie. Now, it's been out for 2 days, so I figured I'm safe to give spoilers, but as long as I give a spoiler warning. Cool. But at the moment, you're fine. I'm going to talk some non-spoiler stuff. So, I think, if you're not aware, this movie's been getting a lot of negative reviews. And I think a lot of the negative reviews actually helped brace me for some of these films' flaws, which actually helped me enjoy it more because I wasn't, what they call it, like side hit, I don't know, hit on the side by unexpected flaws because I was expecting it. I was like, all right, so I know that's going to be real fan servicey. I know that J.J. Abrams is basically going to disregard The Last Jedi. I know Rose barely appears in it. I know that they don't really give an explanation for why the Emperor's there. He's just there. I know that the opening crawl title gives away a lot of information, and a lot has happened in between the films. So I think it helped. I mean, you may consider those spoilers. But these are all in spoiler free, and it helped me. I don't consider them spoilers because it didn't spoil anything for me. It actually helped brace me, and all the major plot points were not spoiled, so I still really much enjoyed it. And I, as I said, I would argue I enjoyed it a lot more because I knew to expect these things, so I wasn't surprised. Now, did I like the film? You know what? I want to address that one I just mentioned about this being really fan servicey. In fact, I have heard several critics, several people said that this movie should have been called Fan Service the Movie. And that really had me concerned because that's the thing I really did not like about The Force Awakens and Game of Thrones. And whenever a property does way too much obvious, blatant fan service, I'm out. I hate it. Oh, Jerome in the chat says, oh my God, I kind of thought this was poo-poo. And fair enough if you did. I mean, I can definitely see that perspective. But anyway, back to the fan service. So I heard this movie was going to be fan service, the movie. So as I said, I braced myself for that. But I actually kind of disagree with that. Now, was there a lot of fan service in it? Yeah. No, I'm not gonna refute that. Yeah, absolutely there was. Where I would contend, though, was the fan service in this film worse than The Force Awakens? I would argue that it was not. I would argue The Force Awakens was worse. Main reason why. Now, were there a lot of beats from the original trilogy, particularly The Return of the Jedi, that were repeated? Yeah, sure. There were a couple blatant homages. There were a couple of callbacks. Oh, remember this, remember that. But did this film copy and paste the plot of Return of the Jedi and put it into this movie? No, it did not. It barely did. It pretty much went in a lot of original directions like The Last Jedi did. And even though there were a lot of callbacks, sure, there were a lot of reminiscent scenes, sure. But Force Awakens copy and pasted the plot from A New Hope, like beat for beat for beat. Now, sure, it added some new characters, added some new elements, but as I covered in my recent rewatch review of that film, I think that just made the film overloaded, that like it was trying to do too much. Now, I want to be clear, when I say the film was trying to do too much, I'm not talking about the new elements. new elements of what they should have kept. It was the copy and pasting of the original New Hope that they should have torpedoed, that they should have got rid of, and then it wouldn't feel so busy. It wouldn't feel like it was trying to do much of it, just focused on the new elements instead. And to be honest, I think this film did a much better job of balancing that. And honestly, I will say, I did like this film better than The Force Awakens. Now, that's not to say this film's not without its flaws. There are some pretty big flaws in this film, but I was never that big on The Force Awakens. I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Fun movie, whatever. But I think I was a lot, like I'm going to quote Dan Murrell again. I'm just picking on him a lot. I enjoy Screen Junkies a lot. I watch it all the time. I usually like Dan Murrell, but every once in a while I'll say something that I completely disagree with. And he said that Episode 9 was the worst Star Wars film ever, and that he actually really liked Force Awakens. First of all, I think the prequels, particularly the first two, very clearly worse. Much. I mean, this film doesn't even touch the terribleness of the first two prequels. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. And as I said, I would even go as far as to say it was better than The Force Awakens. Now, was it better than any of the three original Star Wars trilogy? No, absolutely not. It was not. And as far as The Last Jedi goes, I'm still on the fence with it. And Revenge of the Sith, I think I like Revenge of the Sith better than most people, so I think I might even put Revenge of the Sith better in this film. Any Ewoks? Do you want me to spoil? Okay, I'm going to spoil this. So if you don't want to know if there are any Ewoks in the film, skip ahead. Okay. Here we go. Spoilers for the Ewoks. One tiny little scene of Ewoks at the very end of the film. So technically yes, but yeah, not really. There you go. Spoilers over. But anyway, Jerome says this Christmas season was really leading up to Cats, not Star Wars. I don't like watching so bad it's good films in general. I mean, there are some few exceptions to some episodes of Star Trek I enjoy because they're so bad they're good. But I really have no interest in seeing Cats because it's so bad it's good. I'm sorry. I don't care. And plus I just hate musicals. So I think I would not get enjoyment. I know a lot of people get enjoyment out of how terrible that film is, but I would not. Just me personally. And Jerome says, I'll agree that even at its worst, it's not prequel bad. Well, there you go. Now, from what I heard is that before I saw this film is that the plot is all over the place. And I don't know, to a degree. I don't think it's that bad, but it is. I've seen better plots. It's not the best paced plot. Now, something that Dan in particular bitched about was that it's basically a MacGuffin hunt. Oh, we got to find this MacGuffin. Now we found this MacGuffin. Now we have to find this MacGuffin. Let's go here. Let's go there. Oh, where's the MacGuffin? And not so much, to be honest. I mean, sure, yeah, he's definitely accurate. That's definitely what they did in this film. But it didn't really bother me all that much. I mean, it wasn't the best thing ever. It's not the best way to tell the story, that's for sure. But was I completely annoyed and pissed off and thought it was total garbage because it didn't? No, not really. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it didn't bother me so much. Because the character stories were really good. And to me, that's always the foremost, the most important thing about a film. And that's why I would put this film above The Force Awakens, because I think this film does a much better job of establishing and developing the characters than The Force Awakens, and even The Last Jedi did. Well, Last Jedi, with the exception of Rey and Kylo Ren, which is what I loved about The Last Jedi. And so the Rey and Kylo Ren was just as good in this film as it was in Last Jedi, but it did a much better job of developing Poe and Finn. Rose became a side character with just a couple of lines, so maybe not so much her, but I love how it had the Rey, Poe, and Finn dynamic. That it had this trio of three main characters who had a good camaraderie, good chemistry. That's something I think both of the first two films lacked. And I said this with the discussion I did with my brother, and he kind of disagreed with me. That's what kind of bothered me about The Last Jedi, that they separated Rey and Finn for the entire film. Like, they barely were met, and I thought they had really good chemistry in Force Awakens, so I thought it was a mistake. And they waited till the end of Last Jedi to introduce Poe to Rey, which I think was ridiculous. So I love that this film really had that chemistry between. This is what I think those first two films were lacking. All right, jump back. In the trash, Mr. Wick says it's 125% trash. Well, fair enough if that's your opinion, but I don't share it. Jerome says the story felt so strange. I felt like at points I was watching a fan film, but with a big budget. I can definitely see that point of view. And Jerome also says, "Oh, I cannot agree with the character thing. This is the most empty these characters have felt to me." Well, that we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one, because I think this is the characters at the best, and that's what really attracted, particularly Rey and Kylo Ren. I think anyone who says Rey's an empty Mary Sue after this movie, I completely disagree with it. Before, I was like, yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from, and I still can as far as the first two movies are concerned. But with this film, I think she's just as fleshed out as any good character should be, personally. Just me. Now, and Jerome says, I've defended the trio more than a lot of people who trash these movies. Well, fair enough. But here's the thing. The beginning of the film is incredibly rushed. And again, it helped that I was prepared for this. I knew this was coming, so it didn't like catch me off guard. How rushed how the opening crawl does sort of create an entirely different situation. And I wouldn't say, I think some people are a bit too harsh that he completely disregards The Last Jedi. And this is maybe, if you consider this spoilers, then you can jump out of that. This is very slight spoilers. I don't really consider spoilers, so I'll say it in the spoiler-free section. Because actually, I think my brother even said this in his spoiler-free review. They disregarded the whole thing from Last Jedi about anyone can use the Force, how they had the broom kid at the end of the film, which I actually really enjoyed. They did kind of disregard that. But other than that, I mean, Rose, okay, they disregarded her. But other than that, I don't know. They definitely built off of the Rey and Kylo Ren stuff. And the Luke stuff. They definitely didn't disregard that. They were very consistent with this. So they did focus on that aspect of it. But a lot of the other... And they even mentioned... I think they even name-dropped Holdo in this film. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, they definitely course-corrected. But I don't think it was, like, totally, like, oh, fuck this movie. I'm going to undo everything. Like, I didn't think it was to that level. But it was obvious J.J. Abrams wanted to do his thing and not what was... Rian Johnson was setting up for, which I honestly assumed that. Like, I knew, like, I was thinking before I saw this movie, I'm fine with J.J. Abrams undoing the direction Rian Johnson was going, as long as he does it smoothly in a way that doesn't seem like a contrived retcon. And I would say I'd give them a score of like 60% when doing that, maybe 65% successful on smoothly doing it without retconning, because some of it did feel like a very obvious... Well, one thing in particular, which I'll get to in my spoiler review, was a complete retcon, but I would say most of it was actually, especially as I said, the Kylo Ren and Rey stuff, and it was actually quite smooth, even though they were definitely taking that in a different direction, but it still felt smooth. So I give them a score of 60 out of 100 for smoothly transitioning without it feeling like a contrived retcon. So 40% I would say felt like a contrived retcon. But anyway, Duran also says, oh no, I already read this chat. Anyway, so what else do I want to say that's spoiler free? I like the ending. I think I heard some people complain about the ending. For the most part, I thought it was very powerful. It did feel like a really good conclusion. But what I will say is the one thing I completely agree with people on who were negative on this film, that I think is absolutely true, is that the new trilogy doesn't feel like it's not cohesive. And I kind of knew that would be the case. And to be fair, I don't think that's so much a problem with this film. I think this film is facing the consequences of the two previous films. That, I mean, there's no way after we got Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, it doesn't matter who directed or who wrote the final chapter, there's no way it could be smooth. Because either you go with what The Force Awakens set up or you go with what The Last Jedi set up. There's really wasn't a really great way to do both. And maybe it would have made more sense to go with The Last Jedi since that was the previous film, so it would have felt more smooth, but it was J.J. Abrams who was directing, not Rian Johnson, so he was going to go more with The Force Awakens, which, whatever, it's fair is fair. But it's obvious to me is that the whole trilogy is not cohesive, and the final film does suffer from that really. And the trilogy as a whole doesn't feel like a true trilogy. And I do put a lot of the blame on The Last Jedi for that. As much as I like the movie, although I don't think it's the best thing ever. I have a lot of issues with that movie too. Which is why I'm saying I'm not sure which one I think is better, because the more I think about Last Jedi, the more I watch it, the more issues I have with it. But I still overall positive on it. But I still like both of these better than Force Awakens. I honestly think Force Awakens is worse of the three, but I was a lot more negative on The Force Awakens than a lot of people, even though I still like it. But anyway, yeah, and I think the problems with The Force Awakens, not just The Last Jedi, because The Force Awakens relied too much on imitating A New Hope instead of setting up a new storyline. It did, but it could have done a better job. It could have focused more on setting up a new storyline. Like Maz Kanata, again, if you consider this a spoiler, whatever, it's not really. But Maz Kanata was also in this film. And I still maintain, what I said in my rewatch review, that she is an empty MacGuffin character who I think was very poorly done and just seems thrown in there just for the sole purpose of throwing out exposition. She has no characteristics, no background. I have zero investment in her. She's just an exposition machine. And I think that's actually true in this film more than any other. To be honest. And so Force Awakens, as I said, a lot of people thought Rey was a Mary Sue or underdeveloped, and I think a lot of the blame lays on The Force Awakens for not setting things up properly, personally. Anyway, Duran says, I'd say the biggest fault with the trilogy was how disjointed it is. There's clearly no consistent storyline, and all feels reactionary to the response to the film before, no end-game plan. 100%. 100% agree with you. That's very clear, and I think that is a very obvious, very clear flaw that a lot of people, regardless of how they feel about these films, love them, hate them, in between. I think pretty much everyone's going to agree on that. Is that, and I think in my brother's review, he said he didn't think Abrams should have directed all three, but I actually would have preferred Abrams directing all three than what we got. Abrams should have directed all three, or Rian Johnson should have directed all three, or better yet, get someone, a better director, to direct all three, but it should have been. Now, you might say, well, Mark, the original trilogy wasn't all directed by George Lucas, but he was the driving force. He was a consistent voice. Now, so it's possible you could have had different directors, but you would need a more driving force of a vision, one true vision storyteller throughout the entire trilogy, even if they had other directors come in and add their taste to it. But it's obvious that there was no driving force, that Kathleen Kennedy was just a money person. She had no real creative driving vision or force, and that she just let Abrams and Johnson do whatever the fuck they want. And both of them didn't really consult or consider. Now, Abrams did play lip service to, I talked to Rian Johnson about it, but they obviously still just did their own thing. And I can see that parts of the film Abrams was trying to yes and Johnson, but other parts he was just being like, "Well, fuck that! I want to do what I did in Force Awakens," and that's a problem. No, I think if J.J. Abrams had directed all three films, this would have been a better trilogy. It would have felt more consistent. You wouldn't have that jarringness, even though I think Rian Johnson's better director than Abrams, to be honest. It doesn't matter. As long as we had one vision throughout the trilogy, it would have worked a lot. And I can't see that the reason why this film was throwing so much exposition at you at the start is because the second film was supposed to do that, but it didn't. It went off and did something totally different because Abrams didn't direct it. It didn't have anything to do with it. And so he had to course correct and throw all this exposition at you in the crawl in the first hour of the film. And sets up a completely different dynamic. All right, so I think that's all I got to say about spoiler free. I'm 20 minutes through my review, so I'll check in the chat. I know I think I'm caught up with the chat. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the spoilers now. Spoilers. So if you have not seen this film, go away, or I'll taunt you a second time. It's Monty Python and the Holy Grail reference. Anyway, yes. So anyway, I'm going into spoilers now. So now's the time for you to make like a tree and get out of here if you haven't seen the film yet. So anyway, okay. Spoilers abound in 3, 2, 1. I give you plenty of warning. So let's talk some spoilers now. The Emperor Palpatine, definitely the worst part of the film for me is all of a sudden we're focused on him now. All of a sudden he was the mastermind of the entire trilogy. All of a sudden off screen in the opening crawl, just like, oh, the Emperor's alive now. Deal with it. And I don't think that's very good storytelling. And I mean, I think, and plus, it's really, that's the part where when I hinted at in my spoiler-free section that there was one big thing that was obviously a retcon, I'm talking about the Emperor. Obviously a retcon. In fact, it's J.J. Abrams didn't even plan this in The Force Awakens. It's obviously a retcon. Now, I think that Abrams was setting up Snoke to be like the new Palpatine ripoff, but when Rian Johnson just killed him off without an explanation, he was like, well, what the hell do I do now? Oh, let's bring back the Emperor, I guess. In fact, we get the explanation that Snoke was kind of a clone created by the Emperor in order to do his biddings. I don't think that's a very satisfying answer to who Snoke is. All right, Duran in the chat says, I think Rian Johnson would have been great to direct the whole trilogy. I would have been really interested to see how he would have started the trilogy. I don't know. I will say I think Rian Johnson, I hope, because there's just been this talk for years, and they're saying it's still a possibility. At one point I thought it was scrapped. But I hear now that Rian Johnson could create his own Star Wars trilogy that has nothing to do with the Skywalker. And I think that's what he should have done in the beginning. I think he shouldn't have been involved in the episodes because he obviously wants to take the Star Wars franchise in a totally new, different direction, which is fine. I think that's a great idea. I have no problem with it. But it didn't quite fit in doing it within the established trilogy, particularly if you're only doing one episode out of 3. I still maintain that if the entire trilogy was done by Johnson, it would have been better than it was. But I think, honestly, Rian Johnson's better off doing his own Star Wars trilogy. It has nothing to do with the established episodes. That's what I think they should have done for a get-go. So that's why I'm still hoping that they will do this, even though, a lot of strong components hate him and say, call him ruined. Johnson said he ruined their childhoods, so it may never happen. But I actually think it might be decent if it has nothing to do with the episodes that are established, Skywalker or whatever. And Duran says, and fuck me, the Emperor was the most lame he's ever been. Yeah. No, I definitely am going to have to agree with that. And the explanation. I'm sorry. Give me a second here. The the explanation that Rey was Palpatine's granddaughter. Now, this is another obvious thing, as I alluded to, that they're retconning the Last Jedi, because Last Jedi totally was not implying that. It was totally implying that anyone can be the Force, and Rey just so happened to get a lot of Force. Now, I will grant you that is a kind of that's a lame explanation, or at the very least, we need it more. Explain this more. But instead of explaining it more, they just disregarded it and said, no, you're Palpatine's granddaughter. And I totally do not think that J.J. Abrams had intended this in The Force Awakens. I don't think J.J. Abrams intended anything. He's the mystery box man. He was just like in Lost, because he was involved in the first season. He's just throwing shit out there and hoping someone else will deal with it. Because in Lost, Lindelof and Carlton Cuse had to take over. But here, he actually found himself that he had to deal with it. Like, oh shit, I don't know. I never thought I would have to answer these stupid questions. I thought I'd stick some other sucker with having to do that. So it's like, oh, what can I do that will please the fans? What can I do that will provide a lot of fan service? I know. Let's bring Emperor Palpatine back and say that he's Rey's grandfather. Fans are going to love that. I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. Now, I will say, once I accepted this premise and suspended disbelief, and I was like, all right, this is where you're going. This is where you're going. Let's roll with it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending where Rey confronted the Emperor. I'm sure a lot of people are going to complain the hell out of it, how she was every Jedi and she fought the Emperor back and killed him, and that we actually see his face melt away, so he's dead. Although, if you've seen the X-Files, you know seeing someone actually head explode means nothing. And the fact that they brought the Emperor back in the first place shows that means nothing, because that's the problem I was thinking of throughout the entire film, is that there's zero stakes, because if the Emperor dies, I'm not going to believe he's dead, because he was already dead. He was already died, and they gave no explanation to why the fuck he's still alive. Now, I think some people are saying that he implied that when he fell, some of his minions found him, and he used the Force to keep himself alive, and they hooked him up to all these machines, which is why we see him hooked up to all these funky machines, all these people tending to him at the end. Bullshit! Excuse me. Bullshit! That is the biggest. And I heard some other theories about the Darth Plagueis being able, the wise, the tale of him being able to bring people back, which is what he was talking about, and that he used that for bullshit. What it does is that completely erases the stakes, because now, even though I saw his face melt, is he really dead? I mean, they say it's the last episode in the Skywalker saga and not going to do any more, but when that money comes, cha-ching, 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 who knows, maybe even 20, 30 years from now, they're going to do another one, and they're going to find some fucking way to say, actually, the Emperor's still alive, because there's zero stakes. It takes away the stakes by bringing back a character who's supposed to be dead and saying, actually, he was the Phantom Menace behind the entire trilogy, even though he never appeared and wasn't even mentioned in the first two films. And we're just going to retcon him in and say that he was the Force behind it the whole time, and even though he's supposed to be dead. That is the way, that is 101, the way... textbook way to undermine yourself and lose the faith in the viewers. You lose them. They no longer trust you when you do something like that. And I think that is definitely the biggest flaw of the film to me, is that. Now, Jerron says, I don't want to think about Palpatine impregnating someone. That's a good point. And they didn't explain like that he had a son or what's the deal? When did he have a son? How did he have a son? What's the deal with that? Never explained. Just he has a son, and they're kind of inconsequential to the plot because he didn't give a fuck about them. He was just worried about his granddaughter. Well, how come the son didn't have his powers? How come it just skipped a generation? I don't know. Anyway, Duran says the first line in the opening crawl made me laugh out loud in the theater. The dead speak. Not as funny as episodes 3 War. There are heroes on both sides, evils everywhere. I didn't mind that. A lot of people had issues with that, but again, I'm not as negative on episode 3. But the whole dead speak thing didn't bother me that much because, as I said, I knew it was coming. I mean, I get what you're saying that phrase, it sounds ridiculous, especially all capitalized with the exclamation point. I get that. But because I knew the opening crawl was going to throw some shit at me, I wasn't too bothered by it. Yeah. So, what other spoilers do I got for you? I love where they went with Kylo Ren. I think some people might have issues with the fact that Rey turned him good, or actually, really, it was Leia who did it, which is why I think it worked. Obviously, they had to do some camera trickery with Leia, with Carrie Fisher passed away, and I think I heard a lot of people said that is obvious, but they did the best job that they could, and I'll agree with that. I think, and I do wonder if someone who's completely ignorant of the whole situation, who knows nothing of Star Wars, Carrie Fisher passing away, if they would even notice. I think it definitely sticks out more to those who are aware she passed away. Those who have not might not, because you can tell they have a lot of shots from the back, and she kind of doesn't talk much. She often find ways to have her just look. They just found ways her expressions could do. And of course, when she actually does die, they don't show her face. They probably have a body double who's lying down or whatever. But I think it was effective storytelling. I did like. I know. I don't know how my brother feels. I haven't seen the spoiler review yet, or he hasn't released it yet. But when I did my video with him about Last Jedi, he said he didn't want Kylo Ren to turn good, and I wonder how he feels about it now. I think it was earned in this film. I think the film did a good job earning it, so I didn't have a problem. I think it was actually a really satisfying ending to have him and Rey team up to defeat the Emperor. I think it was satisfying that he gave his life. If not, it was very predictable, but it was still satisfying that he gave his life. I mean, the kiss I could have done without. I don't think the kiss was entirely necessary, but I like the sentiment behind it. I think it was a very touching ending for the character. I mean, again, really reminiscent of the whole Darth Vader sacrificing himself to save Luke's life and Luke bringing him back from the good. So very, callback. There's a lot of callbacks. Oh, you remember Endor, and there's some Ewoks, and here's the Death Star, and ooh, you remember, you remember this, you remember that. Oh, there's Lando. He's just there to be like, hey, I'm Lando. Because we already killed off all the other main characters from the original trilogy, so we gotta bring back Lando. Anyway, sure. But again, I really honestly don't think that the fan service was any worse than the Force. I do think the Force Awakens had worse fan service because it copy and paste the fucking plot of A New Hope. I mean, there were some obvious callbacks to Return of the Jedi and the turning the person to good and taking on the Emperor, sure, but that's not, the entire movie wasn't a copy and paste from New Hope the way Force Awakens was. It didn't bother me. Jerome says, yeah, the Leia scenes felt clearly stitched together, but for real, they did the best they possibly could. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As I said, I liked Rey's character story. And I think I'm happy with her character story in the entire trilogy. I talked about how the entire trilogy seems disjointed, but Rey's the exception. I think I like the Rey and Kylo Ren plot. Now, Rose, this is another obvious sort of retcon that J.J. Abrams didn't really want to have to, because he demoted her to one of those back, because they had my brother talked about Charlie from Lost, Dominic Monaghan. They had that one dude who played the pilot on Lost, who's been in a bunch of J.J. Abrams shit. He was just a background character to be like, oh, well, blah. They essentially made Rose one of those characters who just stood in the background. Oh no, how are we gonna do this? And that I didn't like. Love or hate Rose is not the point. The point is that The Last Jedi established her to be a main character. More to the point, they established her to have a connection, a close connection to Finn. Now all of a sudden that's gone, and Finn's hitting on this other chick that they just introduced, which leads me to another complaint I have about this film, which I probably should have mentioned in my spoiler-free section, but I'll mention it here. The new characters did not work. I said the characters in this film were well developed. I'm talking about the main characters. All these side characters that they introduced, like, I don't know any of their fucking names because they did such a bad job. Like that one chick with the helmet that had a thing for that Poe had a thing for. Like, I didn't care about her. Or, the other chick who said she used to be a stormtrooper and she had that whole band of people who used to be stormtroopers and she's hanging out with Finn. I didn't care about her. I thought The Last Jedi did a better job of introducing Rose than this film did of introducing any of these new characters. Oh, and we just have another, because Hux was your generic emperor, empire, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then they introduced another one because Last Jedi kind of made Hux into a joke, so J.J. Abrams killed him off because of that, and they introduced yet another plane who served the same purpose that Hux served in the first one, just to be a generic commander going, oh, yes, sir, I'm going to blow them up, and having zero character traits or personalities. So, I don't know. I think I heard some people say they liked this character as a villain. I didn't. I mean, I would prefer Captain Phasma over this character, if I'm being completely honest. Anywho, Jordan says, my favorite scene were C-3PO scenes, though I wish they didn't bring back his memories. Yeah, I think it is kind of cheap to bring back his memories because it kind of alluded to R2-D2 had him, but C-3PO didn't trust that he did, but it turns out he did. That was kind of cheap. I think it would have been more powerful if he never regained his memories. Although, I will say the scenes of him being like, who are you? That joke got a bit old. I think they overplayed their hand a little bit with that joke. I didn't mind. I loved Luke's appearance. So he only appeared as a Force Ghost in one scene, or you could say a couple of scenes, but mainly there's that one scene. He basically served the purpose that any Force Ghost would serve. I mean, it was kind of like the way Yoda was in The Last Jedi. And honestly, this is the one thing I wouldn't mind if they retconned. If they retconned it so Luke wasn't really dead, I would have much preferred them retconning that than retconning that the Emperor wasn't really dead, if I'm being perfectly honest. Because I think the circumstances surrounding his death were just a bit shady and not very well explained. Oh, he used too much Force power, so he turns into a Force Ghost. I don't know. Something about that never sat right to me, so I wouldn't mind if they undid it, but they didn't. It's the one thing that they didn't undo, so, whatever. Nothing I can do about that one. But I did like his partner. I did like his sort of the way he appeared, and I'm sure people were going to pitch a fit about the fact that the Force Ghost actually was able to grab a lightsaber, just like they complained about Force Ghost Yoda destroying a tree with lightning. I'm in the camp of who gives a flying rat's ass. Obviously some people, but obviously not this guy right here. I don't care. Who cares? I mean, why does it matter? I don't know. Now, for those people complaining that Last Jedi didn't have enough lightsaber fights, which I think is a bogus complaint, as I already said in my Last Jedi review. They should be happy with this because now you can't even argue they're not. Because it's lightsaber on lightsaber, the way you guys, for some reason, very specifically wanted it to be, which I still don't get. I never will. And I did think it was great. I still prefer the Last Jedi throne room fight scene, if I'm being perfectly honest. I still think that is the second best of the entire Star Wars saga, behind The Empire Strikes Back with Darth Vader and Luke. I think the second best is still the Kylo Ren and Rey in The Last Jedi. I know everyone disagrees, but I don't care. That's how I feel. But the one in this film with Kylo Ren and Rey on that little ship in the ocean or whatever that you saw in the trailers was pretty damn good too. It was pretty awesome. So I did really enjoy it. That was great. Now, the Knights of Ren, these guys were underdeveloped. I talked about them a bit in my rewatch reviews, and my brother hadn't even heard of them before because I think, to be fair, they're just the only reason I heard of them is because I was talking to people who read supplementary material because they never mentioned them in the films. I mean, they show them very briefly in the one flashback in The Force Awakens, but they never talk about them. And now all of a sudden they're in this film. And they never explain or giving any character. They're just there. They don't actually do that much. They find Rey on that one planet, and then they turn on Kylo Ren at the end. Either develop them from the beginning or don't fucking have them. That's something I can totally agree with. I mean, the Knights of Ren sounded like it's a cool name. Sounds like a cool concept. But you're not going to do much with them, then what's the fucking point? I say. Anyway, Durant says, for some reason I thought Luke was going to be in it more as a Force guy. I thought he was too. I guess the fact it was called Rise of Skywalker threw me. Now, Rise of Skywalker, at the end, Rey says her last name is Skywalker. And she's obviously saying, she's not a genetic Skywalker, but she feels like she has the most connection to the Skywalkers and she's honoring them. And she feels like she's a Skywalker in spirit. So Rise of Skywalker most likely does refer to Rey, could also be interpreted also referring to Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren, who redeems himself, as I said, in a way that is very reminiscent of Return of the Jedi. But whatever. I thought that part worked. It wasn't. I don't think it relied too much on the original trilogy like The Force Awakens did. So, yeah, I think that's about all I gotta say about this film. I've been going for almost 45 minutes, so that's good enough for me. Jerome and Chess has agreed on the Knights of Ren. Why are they here? I remember when they were marketed heavily before Force Awakens and absolutely nothing came of them. Absolutely. So anyway, I wonder if there's anything else I'm forgetting about that I wanted to talk about. No, a lot of it was like MacGuffin chase after MacGuffin chase. Like that one sequence we got on the planet where they're having a festival. There was really no point in that, that sequence. But anyway, my rating for tentatively, because I just saw it's still fresh in my mind, but I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. Which is what I gave The Force Awakens, but I do think this is better than The Force Awakens, but I'm not going to give this movie an 8. I don't think this is an 8-level movie. I think 7, even 7, stretching a little bit. But there's a lot of things I liked about it. There's a lot of things I think have worked. I said that there's good character beats. So yeah, no, I take that back. 7 is a good number for it. But I don't think it quite makes that 8. There's too many flaws for me to give this an 8. Anywho, yeah, that's it for my review of Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I do more videos on The Expanse. I was about to say Game of Thrones, but I don't cover that show anymore because the ending sucked. But no, check out my channel for The Expanse. I'm going to be reviewing, putting all these reviews out. If you haven't seen Season 4 of The Expanse yet, that's something to put on your to-do list. I'm also going to cover Mr. Robot, how that's turning out to be an amazing season. Hopefully the finale comes out this Sunday. Hopefully that's going to be awesome. And also going to be covering Picard when it comes out and other Star Trek stuff. So be sure to check that out. And I'll see you guys next time.